Okay, so let's talk about Ireland's economy in 2025, because it is telling a really strange story. You've got this incredible, booming success on one hand, but on the other, you have this significant everyday struggle. So what's really going on here?
It really all kicks off with this one number, 12.8%. Now, that's the high-end forecast for Ireland's GDP growth in 2025. And for a developed economy, that figure is, well, it's absolutely astonishing. Just to give you some perspective here, a number like that means that, on paper, Ireland has one of the fastest-growing economies in the entire world. I mean, that's a headline that just screams massive economic boom, right? But this is exactly where the paradox kicks in. You see these official numbers, and they look so good. So why do so many people actually living in Ireland feel like they're being squeezed? How can there be such a huge disconnect between the stats and real daily life? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to unpack together.
So, the answer. It really boils down to a pretty simple idea. There isn't just one Irish economy. In a way, there are actually two. And if you really want to understand what's going on, you've got to look at them separately.
Okay, first up, you have that big headline number. That's based on GDP, gross domestic product. It's supposed to measure all the economic activity. But here's the thing about Ireland. Its case is pretty unique. That number gets kind of warped by the exports from these massive multinational companies. You could almost think of it like this. Products and profits are flying through Ireland on paper, getting counted, but they don't always really touch the ground for the average person living there.
And that's exactly why economists in Ireland use a different tool, something called Modified Domestic Demand, or MDD for short. It's actually a really clever metric. It basically just strips out all those global multinational effects so we can get a much clearer picture of the actual domestic economy. You know, what people and local businesses are really spending and investing right there at home.
And right here, this is where the paradox just stares you in the face. Look at that. On one side, you've got that huge 12.8% GDP growth. But then you look at the other side, the actual domestic economy, the MGD, and it's growing at a much more modest 3.9%. Now, don't get me wrong, 3.9% is still healthy, but it is a completely different reality from that big headline number. And that gap you see between them, that's the key to this whole story.
So, you have to ask, where is all that GDP growth coming from? Well, it's being powered almost entirely by one thing, this incredible multinational engine.
I mean, just take a look at this. In just the first quarter of 2025, goods exports from Ireland shot up by about 46%. 46%. That is a staggering surge, and it's pretty much the main reason we're seeing that huge GDP figure.
Okay, so what's behind that surge? Well, the main drivers are the pharmaceutical and medtech industries. And get this, a huge chunk of that increase actually came from exporting ingredients for those super popular weight loss drugs. It turns out companies were front-loading massive shipments over to the US.
Now, let's be really clear here. This multinational engine brings some very real, very tangible benefits. I mean, it's fueling record employment. We're talking over 300,000 people working for these firms. And why are they there? Well, these companies are drawn to Ireland because it's stable, it's business-friendly, and it has favorable corporate tax policies. All of that activity then generates these huge corporate tax receipts, which gives the government a really healthy surplus. So yeah, this is definitely the good news side of the paradox.
But that's only half the story, right? The flip side is that the very success of this multinational sector is putting immense pressure on the domestic economy. So it's time we took a look at the cracks that are starting to show in the foundation. In fact, one report calls it the Achilles heel of Irish competitiveness. And what are they talking about? They're talking about the country's really severe infrastructure deficit. You see, Ireland's rapid growth has put this incredible strain on its housing, on its water, on its energy systems, and it's just struggling to keep up.
And nowhere is that strain more obvious than housing. I mean, the country needs something like 50,000 new homes built every single year. But in 2025, it's on track to build just around 32,500. That's a massive shortfall of 17,500 homes. And you can imagine what that does. It puts incredible pressure on rents and just finding a place at all.
And all of this translates into a real squeeze on ordinary people, on families. They're just caught in the middle, between soaring housing costs and a really high cost of living. You know, even if your wages are going up, consumer confidence is actually falling because these punishing rents and high grocery prices are just eating away at your income. And then you have a slight uptick in unemployment, which just adds to that feeling of anxiety.
So this brings us right back to the central challenge here. How do you balance the future? How do you move forward when you're essentially dealing with two very different Irelands at the same time?
I think this sentence really says it all. Ireland's economy today is a story of immense global success, running right alongside some pretty significant domestic strain, two realities existing side by side.
And look, this table just sums up that core tension perfectly. On the one hand, you've got all the markers of global success, that multinational export boom, the huge corporate tax receipts, all that high foreign investment. But then on the other hand, you have the domestic strain, the infrastructure bottlenecks, that housing shortage we talked about, and the intense pressure from the cost of living.
So, this really leaves us with the million-dollar question, or maybe the billion-dollar question. Can Ireland actually leverage all of this enormous wealth from its global success to solve these really deep-seated domestic problems? Can that pot of gold at the end of the multinational rainbow finally translate into a better, more affordable life for people at home? That, right there, is the fundamental challenge facing Ireland's future.